Well, hello, and welcome to Trash with a Capital T, where we give trashy books and movies the love they truly deserve, and some deserve more than others. I'm your host, Bobby. New videos are posted here every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. If you like what you see during the video, give me a like. It makes me feel good and helps the channel. Also, if you want to see more of my content, subscribe. New videos come out regularly. I like to schedule ahead. So today, I am going to actually be doing a V.C. Andrews book review. I have done a primer on V.C. Andrews already, kind of talking about what to expect, who V.C. Andrews is and was, and what those books kind of are. Because I don't think people are always clear with what they're going to get with a V.C. Andrews book. And there are distinct eras of V.C. Andrews books. This book, the book we're going to be talking about today, is April Shadows. So this book comes squarely after the family sagas. We're going into the duologies and trilogies. This is kind of where V.C. Andrews as a brand was trying to refigure itself out. Now we are strictly in Andrew Neiderman territory at this point. He has already been writing his V.C. Andrews for maybe a decade or two by the time we get to this book. So this is not connected to the original Virginia Andrews at all. That's pretty well known at this point. The funny thing is, this is the tagline on here is first in the new series that dares to break all the rules. You know what the rules it breaks are? There's lesbians. That's actually why I wanted to read this book way back in 2005 when it first came out. I was in college and I had read some reviews where like, oh my God, V.C. Andrews has gay characters in her books finally. I was like, okay, I'm surprised that hasn't happened before considering how salacious some of the books are. But don't let the tagline fool you. This one is actually pretty tame as far as V.C. Andrews' shock goes. It's pretty low, but I did enjoy this one. Now, I'm going to preface all of this before we get into the plot breakdown. I enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed this book, and you're going to hear me gush about this book a lot. But if you are thinking, hey, I want to pick that up, I want you to have a realistic idea of what you are going to get when you read a V.C. Andrews book, especially in the Neiderman era. So, understand, the voice, first off, these books are pure melodrama. Do not expect any realism. Don't expect these to be grounded in anything heartfelt or realistic. We are going for pure soapy wonderfulness. Now, I will say I like the characters, and there were several parts of this book that actually did move me. But overall, there's a lot of stuff in here where you just go, okay, I got to take the tragedy ride with these characters. It's just one thing after another. I get it. The characters do not sound realistic. That's the other thing to keep in mind. While this is set in modern day 2005, the characters all feel very 50s and 60s coded, especially in the way they talk. The dialogue is very stiff and proper, especially when it comes to April and her mother. It's one of those things that I had to adjust to because it also makes April sound so naive when she's approached with some of this stuff that happens to her. And she does mature through the book. That is a common theme with V.C. Andrews books. You always have a heroine who is going to grow up, especially during the first book. This is a two-part series, so this is a duology. I have read April Shadows. The second book is Girl in the Shadows. I have yet to find a good copy of this book. All the copies I've ordered are in terrible shape. Bought two, but I think I'm going to just figure out which one is the best one and read that. So don't expect these to also be like, you're going to go in and it's going to be beautiful writing and prose. You're going to be disappointed. If you go in going, I am here for a TV movie of the week in novel format. If you know what that is, you will like this. If not, imagine a Lifetime movie. It definitely has its Lifetime movie in novel form. This is pure comfort read, which is weird because of how much tragedy these characters go through, but that's entirely what this is. It is a comfort read. I read this book and it felt like slipping into a warm blanket. I was able to just kind of let the cheese of it all wash over me, and I was still impressed in parts of this. I had a good time reading it, and it is not a short book. This one comes in at just over 400 pages. I want to say it's like 408, 406. So it's not short, but I enjoyed every minute of the ride. I actually was never bored with this, which is saying something because this is not a fast-paced book. So let's get into the plot. This review is going to be full spoilers because I really want to get into some of the stuff that impressed me, stuff that made me go, oh, that is classic V.C. Andrews weirdness, and some stuff that I didn't love. But the only way to really do that is to get into full details. So if you want to read this one, if my warning didn't scare you off and you're just like, that sounds like maybe I could like this one, maybe cut off now and come back after you're done. But if you're okay with spoilers, and I'm going to not go into too much detail, stick with me. Okay. So we follow April and her family. The book starts with this idea of April, Brenda, her mother, and her father having this idyllic family. Until one day her father pulls a Mr. Hyde and his personality completely changes. He goes from being this loving, caring man to this very critical, distant, forgetful man. Now, to anyone who has ever watched a TV movie, bells should be going off in your head that something is very wrong. But for the characters in the book, they don't fully understand. And April kind of gets the worst part of it because she's younger. She's nowhere near as talented as her amazing athlete sister, Brenda. She's not as driven. She's much more sensitive. She's also overweight, which is not handled the best in the book. But I definitely read a lot worse. And for 2005, I actually think they handled it with some grace. But do expect a lot of comments about April's weight, especially from Brenda. Brenda is kind of a jerk about... And that is pointed out by other characters. So it's not just like, this is okay. Other characters like, ease up a little there. Okay? And her father starts to comment on her weight. He starts to belittle her. Nothing Brenda can do is good enough. April is constantly being compared to Brenda. It is just the family feels like it is falling apart. Their mother doesn't know what to do. And then one day, after their uncle Polliver, whose real name is Warren, he's a traveling magician. After he visits, their father vanishes. And after they have to do a little digging, they hunt down the fact that he is in hospice care. And it turns out he has a brain tumor and he is dying, and he was trying to push his family away so mourning him would be less painful. There was also things like his memory loss was due to the brain tumor, all that stuff, because of course it's a brain tumor. So they are able to find him before he dies, but he's in a coma. They say their goodbyes, but the damage is already really done to the family, and April's mother falls into a deep depression. She does get pulled out of it slightly when Brenda visits from college with her roommate, Celia. And she has fun hosting people in her house, but that doesn't really last very long. And April is left alone with a woman who is deteriorating quickly. She won't leave the house. She's severely depressed. All she does all day is clean. So finally, April goes to visit her sister, and everyone is very worried. And of course, her mother takes her own life. So April's down 2 parents, and we're probably 150 pages into this book. So then what ends up happening is April has to go live with her sister Brenda and Brenda's roommate, who is actually her girlfriend, obviously, in a nice little house in Nashville next to Brenda's college. April's whole life is just flipped upside down without anyone asking her what she wants. Brenda takes the reins and just kind of is like, nope, we have to do all this. You need to grow up real fast. Because April at this point is maybe 15 years old. No, she's 16 because she can drive. She's 16 years old. She's still very, she's young, and she just lost both parents. And Brenda is this driving force, you just got to get over it and move on. So she has to throw her whole life into a tailspin, move to Nashville with her sister and her girlfriend, and things start to settle in. Now, we're going to pause here on the plot real quick, and I'm going to touch on the fact the coming out of Brenda in this book. Now, the way this was initially talked about, it made it sound like April was going to come out as a lesbian. And she may still, I don't know what her relationships are like in the next book. She really doesn't get a lot of romantic time in this one. There are moments, and we'll talk about them, but really, she doesn't have a clear idea of who she is through most of this book. So Brenda is the one where we have the coming out moment. And it was handled well. I was actually shocked at how well it was handled. It was handled with a lot of grace. And I think part of it is Andrew Neiderman understands that these books have an audience, a queer audience. So he's like, let's not piss them off. But more importantly, I was impressed with, even though Brenda is not my favorite character and she comes off very harsh and cold, that is a moment where she feels very human. And April's reaction is realistic. She struggles with it at first, and then she kind of has to she just accepts it. That doesn't mean there's no drama surrounding all of that, and that really comes in the form of Celia, and we'll get to that. But the actual coming out, the acceptance of her as a lesbian, handled beautifully. I was worried because I didn't know how much tact they were going to be using in this book. V.C. Andrews' books are known for having all of the trigger warnings. This one doesn't actually have a lot. So Brenda takes in April, and life starts to settle in. Now, previously, and I kind of missed this, let's get into, because part of what happens is April meets a boy at school. She starts to form a crush on him. They start to form a relationship. And Celia is kind of the one who's there helping her out. And those two, and April and Celia start to get close because Brenda's very driven and focused on school and basketball, specifically basketball, because there are talks about her going pro within the WNBA. But previously, before she had moved, she had an encounter with a boy. April had an encounter with a boy that had gone very badly. The boy tried to sexually assault her. Photos were taken. Brenda and Celia kind of swept in and took care of it, but it has always made April a little distrustful, not necessarily of men or boys, but definitely relationship, closeness, and sex. That comes up later on when she's trying to impress this boy, and they almost sleep together, and she has essentially a panic attack. That night, that panic attack sets everything into the next spiral, because she goes home, she's distraught. The boy was really not great to her, which disappointed me because I kind of liked his character, but he turned out to be a jerk because they always turn out to be jerks. And then Celia tries to seduce her. And Brenda catches them while drunk. And everything bad can happen there, and April runs off and joins her magician uncle. And then we get to the big WTF part of this book, which was one of my favorite parts, and I wish there was more of it, because really it's only about 100 pages worth. The book's about 406 pages. So we only get 100 pages of this, but so April goes to live with Uncle Polliver, the magician. And while she's there, she's like, oh, I'll finally get to meet his girlfriend, assistant, Destiny. And she does. But Destiny is not what she thinks. Destiny is a life-size ventriloquist dummy that has motors to turn her head and lift her arms. And she is used in the act, and she talks and argues with Polliver. Now, if it was just a prop, that would be fine. But Polliver, off stage, treats the doll as if she was alive. Because as it turns out, there was a Destiny. But she passed away. And Polliver loved her. And he transferred his love from the real Destiny, who is no longer with us, to the doll. Now, I'm going to say, at no point does the book imply that he is sleeping with this doll. It is very much implied that he talks to her. He tries to relive memories with her. So it does kind of pull back a little bit, and I appreciated that because it made it very sad, but it allowed April to view this and just see the pain and suffering that people go through loss. And it's quite effective. The sections with April and Polliver together really is where you see April start to mature. And I loved that part. And I wish, like I said, I wish there was more of it, but we have to move through that to get a setup for the second book. So during all of this, Polliver is drinking very heavily. He is getting worse. He's spending more time hidden away with the doll. He's starting to screw up his shows. And April can see that something is really wrong. He also is starting to spit up blood. So the clock is a-ticking on good old Polliver. And of course, he dies. He dies cradling the doll in his arms. It's quite sad. And April is panicking, and she is out in the middle of nowhere, and she meets this old woman who takes her in, calls the cops. And the woman ends up being like, well, why don't you just stay here? If you got nowhere else to be, live with me. I've got a granddaughter who's a little younger than you. She could really use someone to connect with. The little girl is Echo. I think she's supposed to be like 14. And she's young. She's deaf. She's been abandoned by her mother. And this old woman takes great care of her, but she needs more. And she takes an instant liking to April. And April takes an instant liking to her. And you kind of have this wonderful moment where you notice April, you could see April becoming not a woman, that sounds so cheesy, but becoming a mature adult. And she could see the neediness within Echo, and she kind of reflects on her own that she needed someone there for her, and she never had that once her parents passed away. And it ends on this note of where she's like, okay, well, this is where my life is going to start now. I have to figure it all out again. But I will, and I'll move on. She also decides, and this scene got me, and I don't know why, because it's so silly. After Polliver dies, they're basically like, well, all his stuff goes to you, including the Destiny doll. And she has this moment where she's like, I can't sell that doll. I can't let anything bad happen to that doll. My uncle held so much love for what that doll represented. Not necessarily the doll itself, but what that doll represented, that I can't let her just go to ruin. I have to keep that alive for him in his memory because he's gone. And I don't know why when I was reading it, but I got a little choked up. Just the way she handled it, and she recognized the sadness of what Uncle Polliver was going through and just didn't judge him for his own pain. And I loved it. I loved it. There was a maturity in that section that you don't see with a lot of these very trashy books. So it ended on a note where I was just like, oh, I can't wait to see where this character goes. Because I didn't actually like April all that much through the first probably half of the book. But once she starts to grow up and she starts to feel more human, I really did start to connect with her. And once we kind of get her away from Brenda and the constant weight watching, it made her so much better as a character. But in the end, I loved her. I actually really loved her. And I can't wait to read Girl in the Shadows and see what happens with her and Echo. So, obviously, I recommend this book. But I do stick by what I said at the beginning of the video. Understand when you're going into these, you are getting something that I bought this at a Walgreens initially. It was sitting in a rack at the checkout. So, it is Walgreens checkout rack quality. Andrew Neiderman is not a bad writer. And he still kind of tries to keep that gothic feel, but these are not gothic. So just be aware. I want to give you realistic expectations when it comes to the writing. But I enjoyed the heck out of this book, and I highly recommend it. I highly recommend V.C. Andrews. Obviously, this one has trigger warnings when it comes to, or content warnings, if trigger warnings triggers you. It has content warnings when it comes to SA, depression, suicide, all of that stuff. It is handled with a surprising amount of grace and skill that I was not expecting. And I appreciated. Also, the coming out storyline that was the big shock is not the big shock. It's handled so skillfully. So if you want a little queer representation in your trash, this one actually did pretty good. Brenda's not my favorite character, but she's not a jerk because she's a lesbian. She's a jerk because she's too driven to stop and care for those around her. But that I think also comes to her own emotional maturity. And yeah, I appreciated how it was handled. So if you can find yourself a readable copy of April Shadows, grab it. There sadly is no audiobook. I think there is a Kindle version though. So there's a digital version of this floating around, which you may need because these books, these were Pocket Starbooks editions. I think these both were. Whatever paper and binding they used, this paper got very brittle. Now I understand this book is 20 some years old. This was not a first printing, but... Oh no, this was a first printing. So this book is 21 years old. So, but the spine, everything, they don't hold up really well. So you might have a hard time finding a good readable copy. The binding on these is really tight. Made it really hard to read at times. But I recommend April Shadows. I'm definitely going to be coming back when I finally get around to reading Girl in the Shadows, which I can't wait to dig into. And we're probably going to be seeing a couple more V.C. Andrews reviews coming, although my next book that I'm currently reading is a John Saul book. I'm taking some time to revisit some of my favorite trashy authors who I haven't read in a while because, you know, sometimes you just need that comfort, and the world is in a freaking tailspin. When I'm filming this right now, so I'm filming this in mid-January, and this is probably going to be coming out, oddly enough, in April. So you guys, we've already lived through everything, and we'll have a better idea of how things are playing out once it's done. But as things are right now, everything is crazy and terrifying. And sometimes you need to be able to have something that you can ground yourself with. I'm not saying bury your head in the sand. Don't do that. You need to be aware of what's going on around you. You need to be aware of the world around you. And anyone who's saying, why are you bringing politics into this? Because arts are politics. Books like this, because they feature queer characters and they're trashy and people may not like the content, these are kinds of books that get banned. Do you want to live in a world where you can't choose to read something trashy? But we also live in a world now where we are seeing citizens being attacked by our own government. So, it's a lot. It's terrifying. I have relatives who live up in Minnesota. My brother's up there, and it scares me that he's there. And he's in the St. Paul area. That's not fun to live with. So sometimes you need to reground yourself. And I'm going to leave it at that. Take care of yourself. Take care of your mental health. I don't know where things have played out. By the time this video is out, I don't know how things have played out. But that is something to always keep in mind, because no matter what, there's always something in the world that is going to get to you. That it can mentally try and drag you down. Don't let it. Build up safety, build up security, build up community, so that you have something to keep you stable. Take care of yourself as much as you can. All right, enough grandstanding. So, as I always say, love what you love, enjoy what you're reading and watching, and have an amazing morning, afternoon, or evening. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.